It's, well, I confess, it just confuses me. Actually, a lot of things confuse me, but this really confuses me. There's a new fad going on among teenagers on the internet. Now, gang, I vaguely remember those days in my youth. In the deep, dark recesses of the ancient past. And I know we were stupid. I know we were. I'm not quite sure we were this dumb. The big fad nowadays on the internet is what they're calling the laundry pod challenge. Teenagers are being dared to eat the laundry pods. You know what I'm talking about? The little stuff that you throw in the dish in the washer. And they're doing it. Maybe Darwin had a point. I don't know. Maybe, you know. But I look at that and I think to myself, with all of our intelligence, with all of our education, with our emphasis on education, goodness gracious alive, education, every time you hear, you hear from the older folks, young people, isn't it? Make sure you get your education. You got to get your education. Don't forget to get your education. Make sure you do good in school. Got to do it good in school because you got to get in a good college. And if you get in a good college, that way you can get a good job and then you make a lot of money. And that's it. Education. Nowadays we say educated, we're just going to hell smart. And all of this emphasis of education and all of this emphasis on technology, goodness gracious, another thing too that is just baffles me is this. Now that's not true. It doesn't baffle me at all. I thoroughly understand it because I'm addicted to technology myself. There is nothing that gives me more joy than getting a new toy. I love it. But with all of this education, with all of this information at our fingertips, do you know that a man in the early part of the 20th century, in the 1900s, the early part of the 1900s, 1910, that in his lifetime he would read what we have access to in 10 minutes? His entire lifetime of gathering information wouldn't equal what we have at our fingertips in 10 minutes. Just looking on the internet, to the Google. We are an educated, informed group of moderns, and yet the laundry pod challenge is going on among our young people. We're not quite sure which bathrooms to use anymore. The point that I'm trying to make is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the accumulation of information isn't enough to make you a wise human being. It's just not enough. There's the accumulation of information. I've known people who were extremely educated who, like my mama always said, they just didn't have any horse sense. Didn't know enough to get out of the rain. And she would always add that wonderful Southern colloquialism that I love very much. Bless his heart. And so it isn't the amount of information that we have at our fingertips that makes a human being wise. In fact, I would go so far as to say that even in the face of all of the education and all of the information that we have at our fingertips today, I would argue that we moderns are less wise than those who had much less education than we do today. Because wisdom, brothers and sisters, isn't the accumulation of information, it's the ability to deal with reality. And we have such an affluent society. Watch this, folks. We have such an affluent society, such a free society, that we are free to experiment with the very idea of reality itself. I identify as a kumquat. But we have the means, brothers and sisters. Do you understand? We have the technological means nowadays to experiment with that kind of lack of reality, that escape from reality. Because I'm convinced, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this morning, the greatest challenge of our modern age is not to get our children educated, but to help our children deal with reality. But if we're ever going to do that, we're going to have to deal with reality ourselves. One of the greatest gifts that I'm convinced that the Orthodox faith has given me as a former Protestant pastor, as someone who grew up in an American household in this American society, the gift that Orthodoxy invites me to is a full-scale embrace of reality and not hiding in the delusion of what I want or what I'm afraid of. Did you catch that? The gift of orthodoxy is a rhythm of life that wakes me up from the delusions of what I'm either hoping for or what I'm afraid of. Because most people will spend their time daydreaming or being terrified of what they're hoping for or what they're afraid of. It's the reason why the gospel is given to us this morning from the church. Those that sat in darkness have seen a great light, and those that dwelt in the valley of the shadow of death have seen light. The purpose of your religion, brothers and sisters, is not to make you comfortable. Hang around me long enough and you'll hear that over and over again. An old preacher one time told me, he said, "Son, the purpose of the clergy is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable." I believe that with all my heart. In fact, I'm convinced that too many of us are way too comfortable for our own good. Because being very comfortable means that we go to sleep, means that we are too easily gripped by delusion and fantasy, means that we're too easily susceptible to our hopes and dreams and our fears. We get captured by both ends of the spectrum when we find ourselves too comfortable. But when we find ourselves facing reality, it is like someone's turned the light on. And we can see clearly now. The great 70s song. You know it already in your head, don't you? The rain is gone. All obstacles, they're gone now. In your own life, you must hook up together the power and the wisdom of your timeless Orthodox faith to your everyday living. To the extent that you can do that, you will be Orthodox on purpose. You'll understand why the Orthodox Church calls us to this very focused and disciplined lifestyle. You'll understand why the church calls us to fast. In just a few weeks, we're going to be stepping right into the middle of Great Lent, folks. Getting ready for Holy Week and Pascha, which is early this year. Pascha is April the 8th. So, we're going to be receiving new people into the church. But it is not a mistake that the church uses the figure of light dawning to describe the purpose of the faith. In your everyday life, the purpose of the Orthodox faith is to wake you up and keep you that way. So the church gives you the first, third, sixth, ninth hours of the day. The church gives you the rhythm of the daily prayers and the weekly prayers and the monthly prayers and the annual celebrations. The church gives you an embarrassment of riches to keep you focused on reality so that you will not be gripped by the delusion of the darkness of humankind, perhaps very educated, but still gripped by the delusion of darkness. Brothers and sisters, the greatest gift you can give your children is not an Ivy League education. Let's face it, folks, one of the greatest burdens that our kids are having nowadays coming out of school is that most of them are leaving school horribly in debt to school loans. That's the reality. They already begin the process, already behind. A great education is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But that which is better is seeing mom and dad standing in front of their icons at home, making the sign of the cross, and stepping into the rhythm of a daily practice of the Orthodox faith. Those that sat in darkness have seen a great light. So the question that I have for you this morning is this. With all of this light around you, with all of the embarrassment of riches of your timeless and beautiful and centuries-old Orthodox faith that has accumulated wisdom after wisdom after wisdom and laid at your feet, with all of that light, have you seen it? Amen.